Nadia Osei had a gift for going unnoticed. She had worked the overnight inventory shift at Meridian Distribution for 3 years, and in that time she had learned exactly how much space to take up. Not too much, not too little, just enough to remain useful and forgettable. She brought her own lunch. She refilled the paper tray without being asked. She said good morning to the receptionist, Dolores, every single day, and Dolores said it back, and that was usually the most anyone spoke to her before noon. The office had its own ecosystem, like most offices do. At the top sat Priya, Marcus, and Lena, a trio so naturally coordinated that they seemed to share a single calendar. They organized team lunches they forgot to invite everyone to. They volunteered for high-visibility projects before the manager finished his sentence. They were not unkind to Nadia, they simply didn't think about her, which, over time, felt like the same thing. The summit announcement came on a Tuesday. Nadia was at her desk, sorting a vendor discrepancy report, when the company-wide email arrived. Meridian had been selected to present at the Regional Logistics Industry Summit, a 2-day event with senior buyers, potential investors, and a live audience of roughly 400 people. One presentation slot. One big opportunity. The email invited internal volunteers to put their names forward. By the time Nadia finished reading it, Priya had already replied to the thread. Marcus and I are happy to take this one. Lena can co-present. We've been working on our regional efficiency pitch for months, and this feels like the right stage for it. 3 people. 1 reply. Done. Their manager, Jeff, responded within minutes. Perfect. Let's sync Thursday. The thread moved on. A few people added congratulatory emojis. Someone asked if there would be free parking at the venue. Nadia closed her email and went back to the vendor report. 2 weeks later, during a Thursday sync she had not been invited to, it was decided that the presentation needed a backup presenter, someone who could step in if one of the 3 had a conflict. Jeff mentioned Nadia's name without much thought, the way you mention an umbrella you keep by the door. The trio agreed. Nobody told Nadia directly. She found out through a calendar invite with no description. She accepted it. She prepared. She spent her evenings reading through the company's routing data, and her weekends drafting notes. It was not exciting work, but she did it carefully, the way she did everything. Then, 10 days before the summit, the calendar invite was quietly canceled. No explanation arrived until she asked. Jeff's reply was brief. Priya felt it would be cleaner to keep it to the original 3. Just FYI, your prep didn't go to waste, I'm sure. Nadia read the email twice. Then she opened a blank message, typed nothing, and closed it. She went home that evening and sat in her kitchen for a long time without turning the lights on. She was not crying. She was doing something quieter than that. She was trying to locate, somewhere inside herself, the part that was surprised. She couldn't find it. That was almost worse. She texted her manager the next morning and asked to take 3 days of personal leave. He approved it before she reached the office. She collected her bag, nodded to Dolores, and walked out into the gray November air without looking back. The first day, she did very little. She slept until 9, which she never did. She made coffee and drank it standing at her kitchen window, watching a neighbor's cat pick its way carefully along a garden wall. She called her sister, Abina, who lived 2 hours away and always answered on the second ring. Tell me what happened, Abina said, because she could always tell when something had. Nadia told her, all of it, plainly, without editorializing. When she finished, there was a short silence. Can I say something honest? Abina asked. You always do. You've been making yourself easy to overlook, not because you're not good. You're very good, and you know it. But you've been acting like staying small is the polite thing to do. And all that's done is teach people that you're okay with it. Nadia didn't respond right away. Outside, the cat reached the end of the wall, considered its options, and jumped down out of sight. I'll call you tomorrow, she said. Okay, said Abina. Eat something real. She did. She made rice and stew from scratch, which she hadn't done in months, and ate it at her actual table instead of standing over the sink. Then she went to bed early, and slept deeply, and woke up the next morning feeling, not better exactly, but cleaner. The second day, she found the hard drive. It was in the bottom of her wardrobe, tucked inside a shoebox with a dead phone charger and a birthday card from 2 years ago. She plugged it in expecting to find old photos. Instead, she found folders. 3 years worth of folders. She had forgotten, or perhaps she had simply never acknowledged, how much she had been doing in the margins. Every time she noticed an inefficiency in Meridian's routing system, she had logged it privately. Not to show anyone, not to build a case, just because the problem bothered her, and working through it helped. There were 23 separate analyses, rerouting patterns that were adding unnecessary mileage, vendor invoices that didn't match contract rates, a recurring delay in the overnight fulfillment chain that everyone accepted as normal, but that Nadia had traced to a single scheduling overlap introduced 18 months ago. She opened the files one by one and read through them slowly. It was strange, looking at this work. It was good work. She knew how to evaluate it clearly enough to say so without arrogance. The kind of work that, if it had been sitting in Marcus's folder instead of hers, would have made its way into a presentation by now, would have had his name on a slide, would have come up at a Thursday sync. She stayed at her desk until past midnight, organizing everything into a single clean document. Not a complaint, not a list of grievances, a real operational analysis. Tight, sourced, clearly reasoned, with a conservative estimate of what implementing the changes could save the company annually. When she finally went to bed, she lay in the dark and thought about what Abina had said. "You've been acting like staying small is the polite thing to do." She had never thought of it that way. She had always told herself she was being professional, measured, not pushy, but those were just better-sounding words for the same thing. She had been making herself easy to dismiss, and then quietly resenting it when people did. She fell asleep before she reached any conclusions. The third day, she made a decision, not a dramatic one. She did not stand at her window with a newfound fire in her eyes. She sat at her kitchen table with a mug of tea and thought it through practically, the way she thought through most things. The analysis existed, it was good, the company would benefit from it. Those 3 facts were entirely separate from how anyone had treated her, and she had spent 3 years letting her feelings about the second thing prevent her from doing anything about the first and third. She was done doing that. She looked up the email address of the director of operations, a man named Gerald Okafor, whom she had seen in the building but never spoken to. She wrote him a concise, professional message. She explained that she had been working on an internal routing and vendor cost analysis and believed it contained findings relevant to the company's upcoming growth strategy. She attached the document. She asked if he had 15 minutes before the summit. She read it over 3 times, adjusted one sentence, and sent it. Then she washed her mug, changed into comfortable clothes, and went for a long walk. Gerald Okafor replied at 4:17 that afternoon. His message was 4 sentences long. He had reviewed the document. He had questions. Could she come in Thursday morning, not for 15 minutes, but for an hour? And would she mind if he included 2 of the senior managers? Nadia read the message standing outside a bakery, cold air coming off the street, the smell of bread drifting through the door. She wrote back, "Thursday works. I'll be there." Nah. She returned to the office on Wednesday morning. Nothing announced her return. She walked in, said good morning to Dolores, and went to her desk. Dolores gave her a warm smile and slid a small wrapped biscuit across the counter. "Thought you might need this," she said. Nadia unwrapped it on the way to her chair. Priya glanced up from her monitor when Nadia passed. "Oh, you're back," she said, not unkindly. Just neutrally, the way you note a plant has been watered. "I'm back," Nadia agreed, and sat down. She spent the day preparing for Thursday. She printed clean copies of the analysis, organized her notes, and quietly anticipated the questions she'd be asked. She did not tell anyone about the meeting. There was nothing to tell yet. Thursday morning, she arrived at the conference room at 8:55. Gerald Okafor was already there, along with 2 managers she recognized, Helena Cross from finance, and a man named Roy, who oversaw the fulfillment centers. A laptop was open. Someone had brought coffee. They invited her to sit. She sat. She began. The 15 minutes she had originally asked for became 90. She walked them through the routing inefficiencies first, then the vendor discrepancies, and finally the scheduling overlap. Helena Cross stopped her twice, not to challenge her, but to ask for specific page references because she was writing things down. Roy pulled up a map of the fulfillment routes on his laptop and asked her to show him exactly where the bottleneck occurred. She showed him. He nodded slowly and said, "We've been calling that the Tuesday problem for a year and a half. Nobody could find the source." "It starts on Wednesday nights," Nadia said. "The Thursday morning batch triggers it, but the origin is here." She pointed. "It's a 6-hour cascade." Roy looked at Gerald. Gerald looked at Helena. Something passed between the three of them that Nadia didn't try to name. By the time the meeting ended, the whiteboard behind Roy had numbers on it, rough projections, questions to investigate, initials next to action items. One set of initials was hers. She shook hands with all three of them and walked back to her desk with steady steps. The weeks that followed were not a transformation scene, nothing so tidy as that. People noticed, the way people notice when something they couldn't quite describe has shifted. Priya found a reason to stop by Nadia's desk one afternoon and asked, carefully, if she'd be open to reviewing a section of their summit presentation, specifically the routing data. "We want to make sure we're not missing anything," she said, and to her credit, she said it without pretense. Nadia reviewed it. She made 4 notes. Priya used all 4. Marcus added her to an email chain without being prompted. Lena, one Friday afternoon, sat down across from her with a coffee and said plainly, "I think we've been idiots." Nadia considered that for a moment. "Not idiots," she said, "just not paying attention." Lena seemed to find this more uncomfortable than if she had simply agreed, which Nadia suspected was a good sign. The summit happened. Priya and Marcus and Lena presented. From what Jeff reported back, it went well. Several people in the audience had follow-up questions about the routing analysis, which was now woven into the presentation as supporting evidence. 2 months later, Gerald Okafor requested a meeting with Nadia and her manager. He proposed the creation of a small operational strategy function, something the company had needed for a while but hadn't formalized. He thought Nadia would be the right person to lead it, not a promotion handed over out of guilt or politics. A correction, he called it, a recognition of work that had been sitting in the margins too long. Jeff seemed surprised. Nadia did not. She accepted. On her last day at the inventory desk, Dolores pressed another wrapped biscuit into her hand and said, "We always knew it was you." Nadia wasn't sure that was true, but she appreciated it all the same. She kept the shoebox hard drive on her new desk, not as a trophy, but as a reminder, not of what had been done to her, but of what she had almost done to herself. The slow, patient work of making yourself so small that eventually you believe it too. She had stopped believing it. And that, more than any meeting or whiteboard or title change, was the thing that made the difference.